They called it an eyesore. Just another strange machine cluttering up an otherwise perfect lawn. But to me, it was the only thing standing between this town and a silent grave. Though didn't care. They never asked what it was. They just saw wires, antennas, and a pole that leaned slightly too far west. Beatrice Muldain, their iron-fisted president, made her decision with a smile. Violation, citation, threat of legal action, and then removal. I built that sensor from parts one collected across 10 years. After I lost my brother in the 2004 wave, I swore no one else would ever die without warning. I joined the Coast Guard, got certified in marine engineering, worked on top-secret federal systems. That backyard sensor, it was the prototype for something bigger, something they weren't ready to understand. They didn't ask. They just ordered it gone. I stood in my living room holding the violation notice, the ink still drying, and something cracked inside me. Not from anger, from fear. They were planning to remove it on Friday. Friday. That word rattled in my bones. Because Friday was the peak of the seismic shift window, something my private logs had been tracking for months. Minor tremors off the Aleutians, seafloor shifts near Tonga, pressure convergence near the Mariana Trench. Everything pointed to one possibility. A surge, a wave, a timeline. And now, thanks to HOA politics, we had no alarm. I went to the meeting. My voice was calm, but every nerve under my skin screamed. I told them it was a personal project. A weather system. That it measured ocean density and helped calculate tide surges. I begged them to give it one more week. 7 days. Just to stay. Beatrice didn't even look at me when she denied it. The board laughed under their breath. One of them whispered something about tinfoil hats. They didn't know about my brother. They didn't see the water take him while I stood frozen on the dock. I never told them. So they smiled and ruled against me. Friday morning, I went to grab tools from my shed to prepare for relocation. 15 minutes. That's all I was gone. When I came back, the sensor was gone. Not dismantled. Ripped from the ground. The pole snapped like a broken neck. Wires dangled like nerves, severed and twitching. A trail of tire tracks stained the grass, and at the edge of the yard, one of the HOA trucks disappeared around a bend. I ran to the debris. Everything was offline. Power broken. Signal dead. And that's when my phone buzzed. Alert. Pacific Buoy 07, hydrostatic pressure drop detected. My heart stopped. I unlocked the secure app. The sensor I'd synced with the Pacific Buoy net was trying to activate its relay. It needed a handshake with the home unit. But the home unit was gone. I stared at the empty dirt, hand shaking, knowing exactly what the drop meant. It meant the water was pulling back, unnaturally. The kind of pull that comes before a wall of death. No sirens. No alerts. No system to warn the coast. Because they took it. I called the emergency coastal line. It rang 6 times. No answer. I tried my backup contact, Lieutenant O'Connor. Line disconnected. Then the second alert came. Tsunami likely. System unable to confirm warning status. Asterisk asterisk. I looked at my town, still asleep, still unaware. And I realized I had less than 1 hour to warn them. And I was completely alone. The sky looked wrong. Cloudless too blue. The kind of sky that fools people into feeling safe. But the sea doesn't care how pretty the sky looks. When it comes silent, and it comes fast. I bolted into the house, yanked open the cabinet under the stairs, and grabbed my backup battery rig. Years of quiet prep, all for this moment. I ran the wires across the yard, reconnected the frayed cords from the wrecked sensor, and flipped the switch. Nothing. The core was fried. When they tore it out, they snapped the main node. The surge warning couldn't relay, and the satellite link was dead. I grabbed my laptop and hotspot. Maybe I could reroute the signal through a manual uplink, trick the system into broadcasting the warning from here. But the satellite gateway was locked behind federal firewalls. It needed clearance. I had clearance, but not without Lieutenant O'Connor. He was the last bridge left to the federal grid. I tried his old satellite number again. Static. Then a knock at the door. It was Danny, 14. Hoodie stained with engine grease, eyes too big for his face. He lived 3 houses down. Always curious, always watching. And right now, terrified. He held up his phone. Did you see this? It was a map. Tectonic sensors lighting up like a Christmas tree across the ocean floor. He'd been tracking my project, reverse engineering my alerts through my neighborhood Wi-Fi. I told him it was real and bad. He didn't blink. What do we do? I told him to get as many people out of the neighborhood as he could. Start with the elderly, then the families with kids. Tell them whatever it takes. Gas leak, earthquake, flood, anything. He took off like a shot. I ran back inside, bypassed the firewall with an old military override script, and watched the screen flicker to life. Uplink initiated. But the range was limited. Only one relay still online, the coastal emergency tower on the south end of town. And it was locked behind HOA gates. I drove straight there. Halfway down Cypress Lane, I slammed the brakes. Barricades. 2 HOA trucks. And Beatrice, standing there like nothing in the world could shake her. I stepped out, kept the engine running, told her I needed through. Lives depended on it. She said the area was under security lockdown after my earlier disturbance. I said the system I'd been building was linked to national tsunami alerts. She smirked. Said that if that were true, I'd have gone through proper channels. Said this wasn't Indonesia. That people like me, paranoid, obsessed, didn't get to bypass community rules. Every word she spoke made my fists curl. I told her to move the trucks. She didn't flinch. That's when Danny appeared behind her, panting, face flushed. He shouted for people to run. Told them to get out. That the wave was coming. Beatrice turned on him. Demanded he go home. He shouted louder. I watched his neighbors peek through windows, crack doors, check their phones. The fear spread like smoke. A few people began backing cars out of driveways. Beatrice screamed at them, threatened citations, fines. No one listened. Danny pulled out a wrench, stormed to a gate, and smashed the lock. The whole thing swung open. I drove through without looking back. But as I rounded the hill, my phone buzzed again. Sea level recession confirmed, critical threshold met. I reached the tower base and climbed, skipping steps 2 at a time. Plugged in the relay, rerouted the signal, and hit the broadcast. A high-pitched siren screamed across the coast. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Broadcast failed. Satellite rejection. Code 520 ***. The tower lights blinked red. The signal hadn't gone through. And the water had already started to vanish from the horizon. I stood at the top of the tower, sirens still wailing, but the red lights said it all. No one was coming. The system had failed. Below me, people began to pour into the streets. Parents holding toddlers. Teens gripping backpacks like life jackets. Cars jammed intersections, horns blaring, neighbors screaming over each other. Some still stood on porches, confused, frozen. The beach line had changed. The sea had pulled so far back, it left boats tilted on bare sand. Fish flopped helplessly where the ocean used to be. And still, some people laughed, took photos, posted videos. They didn't understand what was coming. I climbed down, chest pounding. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every second felt like glass slipping through fingers. Danny was waiting near the base, holding his phone up like a torch. He went live. He spoke fast, breathless, the camera angled toward the beach. He explained the tide sensor, the alerts, how the HOA destroyed the only warning system we had. His voice cracked when he mentioned Beatrice. Said she silenced it. Said she chose image over survival. The video exploded. Thousands of views in minutes. And then he said my name. The man who tried to warn us. The one they didn't listen to. It felt like acid in my lungs. This wasn't about credit. It was about time. I told him to run, to get to higher ground, and take as many as he could. He hesitated, then bolted. I ran back to my truck, tried one last call to Lieutenant O'Connor. Static. Then a click. His voice was faint, fuzzy, but alive. I told him everything. The sensor. The drop. The system failure. He swore under his breath, told me they'd had similar reports. Buoys triggered from Alaska to Japan. Their systems were down, too. Satellite grid compromised. A cascade failure. Someone would lose everything. I asked him what we had left. He said 2 words. Get high. That was it. The second he hung up, a low rumble shook the pavement. Not thunder. Not trucks. The kind of rumble that sits in your stomach before your ears hear it. I looked west. A thin black line on the horizon. Rising. The first wall of water. No sirens. No broadcasts. No officials. Just me. Battered truck. And a countdown I couldn't see. I gunned it down River Street, horn blaring, shouting through the window for people to move. Some listened. Some just stared. Near the school, I saw Danny again, on top of the gym roof, waving his arms, still live, shouting for the town to wake up. That kid had more courage than most adults I'd known. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Just 2 words. You were right. She was watching the stream from inland. She finally believed me. Too late to stop what was coming, but not too late to save who I could. I reached the town's emergency shelter. It was locked. No power. No guard. I broke the window, climbed through, and hit the manual override for the flood doors. They opened slowly, creaking like a scream. People began pouring in. Seniors, kids, families in pajamas, some barefoot. Beatrice arrived last, soaked, shaking, mascara bleeding down her face. She didn't say a word, just looked at me. For a second, I thought she'd apologize. She didn't. She just stepped inside and sat down like everyone else. Then Danny's voice echoed from the rooftop. He pointed toward the beach. We turned. The wall was closer now, towering, moving faster than sound. I closed the shelter doors. The lock slammed shut, and the world outside turned to thunder. The roar swallowed everything. No screams, no engines, just the ocean crashing over the world like a collapsing sky. The shelter trembled under the weight. Walls groaned. The lights flickered once, then died completely. We sat in darkness. I could hear people praying. Some cried. Others whispered names, loved ones who didn't make it in time. I pressed my hand against the flood door, feeling the steel vibrate like it was seconds from folding. Danny sat on the floor beside me, soaked, shivering, face pale. I asked if he was okay. He nodded, but he didn't speak. For 10 minutes, we sat with the storm. Then silence. Not peace, just a pause so heavy it felt like the ocean was holding its breath. I opened the side hatch slowly. Water poured in ankle deep. Cold. Heavy. But the main chamber held. Outside, everything was gone. Cars floated where streets had been. Palm trees snapped like twigs. Debris scattered across rooftops. And near the edge of town, the HOA clubhouse was a collapsed skeleton of wood and white paint. Beatrice saw it too. Her mouth trembled. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes. Not fear, guilt. But guilt won't rewind the tide. We stepped outside. The air reeked of salt and ruin. People clutched each other, barefoot in sludge. A few called out names. A woman sobbed when she spotted her dog paddling through the wreckage. I climbed the hill behind a shelter where the town's old radio tower stood. It had been dead for years. Rusted. Forgotten. But I had one last card. I ran back to my truck, pulled the backup rig from the toolbox, and wired it into the base of the tower. Danny helped, his fingers bloody from gripping sharp metal. I powered the transmitter. Static. Then a faint tone. I spoke into the mic. If anyone hears this, we survived. This is Halston Bay. The wave hit. We're alive. A pause. Then, crackling through the speaker, another voice. This is Harbor Watch, North Coast. We hear you. We're alive, too. More voices followed. Small towns. Distant shelters. One by one, they lit up the map like stars through fog. Survivors checking in, realizing they weren't alone. Danny smiled for the first time all day. But then a sound broke the moment. Helicopter blades. We looked up. Military chopper. Low. Fast. It banked hard, then hovered over the field near the shelter. A rope dropped. A figure descended. Lieutenant O'Connor. He hit the ground and ran straight to me. He didn't ask questions. Just pulled a tablet from his pack and showed me the map. The wave wasn't over. That wasn't the main surge. That was the precursor. The real tsunami was inbound. Estimated landfall in under 90 minutes. Twice the height, 10 times the force. We weren't safe. Not even close. I stared at the map, jaw-locked. There was only one option. The ridge. A jagged bluff 6 miles inland. High enough to survive anything. But the roads were gone. Power lines down. Bridges snapped. O'Connor looked at me. We walk. And we take everyone. All of them. Beatrice stepped forward. She asked what she could do. Her voice barely held together. I told her the truth. Urian helped carry the kids. Then we moved. Hundreds of us. Survivors walking through knee-deep water, past ruins and memories in silence. No one complained. No one questioned. Danny led the way, hand gripping the shoulder of a woman carrying her baby. The air was still. The sun, too, calm. And behind us, somewhere far beyond the trees, the sea began to breathe again. We moved like a ghost town with a heartbeat. No sirens. No instructions. Just wet shoes on cracked pavement, the shuffle of broken souls piecing themselves back together one step at a time. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. The air said enough. The ridge loomed in the distance, high, jagged, merciless. It looked impossible for a group this broken. Children carried on shoulders, elders with walkers wrapped in trash bags, shoes tied together with twine. But no one turned around. Every few minutes, I checked my satellite reader. The second surge was real. It had already consumed 2 more towns along the coast. The sea was rising again. Faster this time. O'Connor stayed near the front. Calm but focused, watching the sky as if listening for something even worse. About halfway up the slope, Danny collapsed. His legs gave out without warning. I rushed over. He'd been hiding a gash along his thigh, deep swollen. Infection setting in. I looked around. No medics. No gear. Just a few old scarves and a plastic bag someone tied into a tourniquet. Beatrice knelt beside him. Let me carry him. Everyone stopped. She lifted him onto her back, staggering under his weight. But she didn't fall. She just nodded, eyes locked on mine, and kept climbing. It was the first time I saw her as a person. Not a title. Not a rule. Just someone trying to undo what couldn't be undone. We pushed higher. 1 hour in, the wind picked up. Then birds, swarms of them, fleeing inland. A sound followed. Not a wave. A scream from the ocean itself. A hollow roar that made people stop breathing mid-step. The second wall was coming. I urged them on. 1 foot, then another. By the time we reached the halfway ridge, water was already racing through the valley below. It swallowed what was left of our town in minutes. From the top of the bluff, I could see it all. Homes gone. Streets erased. History drowned. But we were still here. Barely. And then I saw her, Maya. She came in from the opposite side of the ridge, driving a military transport. She'd come back. For us. The kids cheered. O'Connor waved her in, and we started loading the injured. Beatrice helped Danny into the truck, her hands shaking. Maya walked over, dirt smeared across her face. She pulled me into a hug that said everything words couldn't. You saved them, she whispered. I told her no. We saved each other. Then the sea hit the base of the ridge. A wall of white and black, tearing trees from roots, lifting rooftops like matchsticks. We all turned to watch it roar beneath us, violence so loud it became silence. No one spoke. We stood there, clinging to each other, watching the final breath of a town that never listened, a place that tore down what it didn't understand. And still we lived. The sun began to rise, burning orange across the wreckage. A new day, raw and uncertain. Beatrice stood beside me, her arms scratched, her HOA badge gone. I said nothing. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just watched the ocean and whispered, I didn't know. I nodded. That was the truth. She didn't know. But now the world would. Because Danny's stream was still live. Millions had watched everything, from the first warning to the final wave. And somewhere in that heartbreak, maybe someone else would listen. Maybe someone would rebuild better, stronger, smarter, not just with walls, but with wisdom. And when the camera caught my face, soaked, hollow, and standing on that ridge with everything gone behind me, I didn't speak for long, just enough to say, this was preventable. Then I looked into the lens and added, if you're hearing this and you still have time, build higher. Think deeper. And never ignore the water again, because it doesn't ask twice. Night fell hard over the ridge. No streetlights. No comfort. Just the hum of Maya's truck engine and the quiet rustle of people trying to sleep on rock and damp grass. We wrapped children in wet jackets, shared protein bars like gold. The air smelled of salt and iron and smoke. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept running, flashing with the faces we lost, the streets we couldn't save. I walked to the edge, staring down into the void where our town used to be. The moon reflected off black water that now owned everything. O'Connor joined me. He handed me a canteen. His fingers were shaking. He told me Harbor Watch didn't make it. The second wave had cut north sooner than expected. Their signal went dark 20 minutes after we spoke. I closed my eyes. He wasn't just reporting numbers. He was telling me friends were gone. He asked if I still had the original tide sensor blueprint. I did. He nodded slowly, then said something I wasn't ready for. Washington's asking questions. They want to talk to you. You and the kid. I didn't say anything at first. The same government that buried my tech was now calling because the sea proved them wrong. He said there'd be hearings, inquiries, investigations into why warning systems were stripped, why civilian alerts were ignored, why HOA boards had the power to dismantle federally monitored equipment. Beatrice heard him. She stepped forward, quiet. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked to testify. She said people needed to know what happened. Not from a news anchor. From her. From someone who destroyed something because she thought aesthetics mattered more than science, more than life. I looked at her. There was no satisfaction in her voice. No redemption arc. Just truth. We packed up at dawn. The transport could only take half the survivors. Maya drove the first wave toward a federal checkpoint inland. I stayed with the rest, waiting for the second truck. Danny was with me. He wasn't just a kid anymore. He was the voice people listened to when sirens failed. His stream had passed 10 million views overnight. Suddenly, people cared. Suddenly, reporters wanted interviews. Suddenly, towns across the coast were pulling blueprints off archived emails, my old sensor designs being reassembled in workshops, garages, libraries. The sensor they laughed at. The one they destroyed. Now they wanted more. I didn't want the spotlight. I wanted safety. But Danny reminded me of something. You built this because you knew we wouldn't always get a second chance. So we gave them one. O'Connor stayed behind to organize the camp. I rode with the second transport, surrounded by people who had lost everything but their breath. We arrived at a federal relief zone. Tents, doctors, media swarms. And then a woman ran to me. She had a laptop open. A live screen. She turned it around. My blueprint. My sensor. Streaming again. Not just in America. Japan. Chile. Indonesia. Towns using it. Testing it. Installing it. They called it the Halston sensor. Named after a town that no longer existed. And beside that screen, a live map, real-time sea level readings, triggered by the very code I'd written on a coffee-stained napkin 5 years ago. Danny filmed everything. This time, I didn't stop him. I stood in front of the camera, sun behind me, eyes hollow but awake. And I said what needed to be said. This isn't about one town. This isn't about blame. This is about warning systems we ignore until it's too late. This is about second chances earned in water and blood. And we won't waste them again. Not this time. Not ever. 2 months later, I stood where the ridge used to be quiet. Now it was a memorial. Names carved into steel. A map of the town engraved in stone, with the tide line drawn in red, where the water had risen. Where it stopped. Where we made our stand, people visited daily. Some left flowers. Some just stood in silence. Others asked questions about the sensor, about Danny, about the night everything fell apart and somehow came together. The town would never be rebuilt where it once stood. The coastline had shifted. FEMA declared it a high-risk zone permanently. What used to be Halston Bay was now a graveyard beneath the sea. But the survivors built something inland. A new start. A place with no HOA boards. No fences pretending to be safety. Just people who listened to science, to each other, to the warnings written in waves. I spent most days in a converted hangar. Rows of desks. Screens everywhere. Volunteers wiring sensor kits and programming alerts. It wasn't a company. It was a mission. Danny ran the live streams now, hosting weekly updates on coastal risk zones. His voice had become something bigger than mine, clear, focused, trusted. He still limped. He never complained. Beatrice helped us secure funding. She donated every last cent of her settlement when a lawsuit hit, when the media tore through the HOA like a storm of their own making. But she didn't run. She showed up. She told the truth. She owned every decision. And that mattered. It mattered more than I thought it would. The military backed the new Tide network. We expanded internationally. We worked with coastal schools, showing kids how to build their own warning systems with simple parts. And every time a sensor caught a fluctuation, every time an alert was issued, someone lived. We heard stories. A fisherman in Bangladesh turned his boat back because of a spike in the data. A girl in the Philippines led her family to higher ground because she followed Danny's channel. A town in Oregon sounded a siren 30 minutes earlier than they would have because of our software. They all lived. And I realized something. This wasn't a redemption arc. This was a chain reaction. From a torn-up blueprint. From a warning silenced by vanity. From a town that drowned but screamed loud enough for the world to finally listen. One night, I stood on a cliffside watching the sea again. Maya joined me, silent at first. She asked if I missed it, the old life, the quiet before the storm. I told her I missed not knowing. I missed the days when the water was just a view, not a threat. But I didn't want them back. Not if ignorance was the price. We watched the sun drop behind the horizon, and I felt it again, the pulse of the earth, the breath of the ocean. A reminder that time doesn't ask permission. Neither does nature. You listen, or you pay. As the wind picked up, I pulled out my transmitter one last time. I turned it on. The screen lit up. All systems active. Hundreds of sensors blinking in sync, across continents, across cultures, each one ready to scream when the sea stirred. This was never about one wave. It was about what we do before it comes, and what we refuse to forget after it's gone. If you're watching this, remember Halston. Remember the silence before the surge, and remember what broke it. Because that silence isn't just history. It's a warning. Like, share, subscribe. Not for views, for voices. So the water never wins without a fight again.